Exactly at 10:43 p.m. on October 15, 2025, Washington, D.C. time, U.S. President Donald Trump publicly confirmed something that until that moment had been a persistent rumor in the halls of the White House: the official authorization of covert CIA operations within Venezuelan territory. The news struck like a bolt of lightning in the middle of the Caribbean, reconfiguring the political and military chessboard in the region. For the first time in more than 2 decades, an American president directly acknowledged having given the green light to lethal actions in a Latin American country. The announcement took place in the Oval Office before a small group of reporters with the American flag and the presidential seal in the background. Trump, accompanied by members of his national security team, justified his decision by claiming that the Nicolás Maduro government represented a direct threat to U.S. security. According to the president, the migration crisis, drug trafficking, and the alleged shipment of Venezuelan prisoners to American territory had motivated the measure. The president was categorical in declaring, "I have authorized the CIA for 2 reasons: because they have emptied their prisons into the United States, and because of the drugs. We have the sea under control. Now we look to the mainland." According to reports leaked by Pentagon officials to the New York Times, the executive order, classified as Directive 71-5, allows the CIA to conduct intelligence, sabotage, and neutralization operations against strategic targets inside Venezuela. These operations would include, if necessary, the use of lethal force under the protection of the National Security Act of 1947. The first movements began 48 hours after the document was signed. At 2:15 a.m. on October 17th, an American reconnaissance group deployed from Hatoré Air Base in Curaçao began low-altitude surveillance flights over the Gulf of Paria. Equipped with thermal detection systems and synthetic aperture radars, MQ-9 Reaper drones sent real-time information to a command center in Florida, more than 2,600 kilometers away. In parallel, a naval contingent from the 4th Fleet intensified its maneuvers in the southern Caribbean. Military sources reported the presence of 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, with the capacity to launch Tomahawk missiles, and a logistics support ship, the USS Burlington. The operations were conducted under the codename Caribbean Sentinel, and their official objective, according to the Department of Defense, was to disrupt maritime drug trafficking routes. However, the Venezuelan government's reaction was immediate. At 10:45 a.m. the same day, Foreign Minister Ivan Gil issued a statement via his official Telegram channel, denouncing that the American actions represented a flagrant violation of international law and an attempt at regime change for economic purposes. In the message, Gil assured that Venezuela's permanent mission to the UN would file a formal complaint with the Security Council and demand direct accountability from the U.S. government. In Caracas, the tension mounted. Bolivarian National Guard troops were mobilized to border areas with Colombia and Brazil, while the Venezuelan Ministry of Defense ordered the regional commands to raise the alert level. During the following 6 hours, Venezuelan radar systems detected irregular movements in the eastern Caribbean airspace, although the U.S. government denied any incursions. The Venezuelan Ministry of Communication affirmed that one of the drones had been temporarily neutralized in the Guiria area, but did not present visual evidence. The tension, however, was just beginning. International analysts were already warning that the authorization given by Trump was not an isolated event, but one more piece in a regional containment strategy that the United States had been preparing for months. With this maneuver, the diplomatic conflict escalated to a new level, bordering on direct confrontation. The true scope of the Caribbean Sentinel operation and its connection to the CIA's covert activities on Venezuelan soil would begin to be revealed just 3 days later, when, during the first 72 hours after the announcement, the diplomatic atmosphere in Latin America became tense and filled with uncertainty. The foreign ministries of Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina requested formal information from the State Department about the scope of the authorization given by Trump. None received a response. In regional intelligence circles, however, the news was not surprising. For months, there had been talk of an intensification of covert U.S. operations in the Caribbean, with movements of unidentified personnel and aircraft detected near strategic islands like Aruba and Curaçao. Operationally, everything indicated that the CIA had resumed a leading role it had not shown so clearly since the Cold War. Its new mandate was not limited to intelligence gathering. It included selective lethal actions, infrastructure sabotage, and coordination with special units of the Southern Command. Throughout its history, the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, has been one of the most powerful and, at the same time, most secretive tools of the American military apparatus. Its reach spans over 80 countries, and its operations rarely come to light. Since its founding in 1947, the agency has participated in overthrows, psychological operations, and sabotages that have changed the political course of entire nations. Cases such as the coup in Guatemala in 1954, Operation Condor in South America, or covert campaigns against governments in Africa and Asia are examples of its influence. In the 21st century, the CIA evolved toward a more technological and decentralized structure. It no longer relies on armies on the ground, but on drones, artificial intelligence, and digital agents capable of infiltrating networks and financial systems. So-called black operations combine cyber tactics with minimal human intervention, generating visible results without leaving traceable footprints. In the Venezuelan context, these capabilities mean that a single well-planned operation can destabilize the energy system, intercept military communications, or sabotage supplies without firing a single shot. Trump's message, though political in appearance, implied something much more serious: the activation of a global intelligence machine with immediate power of action. Meanwhile, inside Venezuela, the Maduro government declared a state of special surveillance in the oil zones of Monagas, Zulia, and Anzoátegui, where the main extraction wells are concentrated. Internal sources from the Ministry of Petroleum confirmed that local technicians detected interferences in the satellite communication networks, linking the production centers with the maritime platforms in the Caribbean. Specialists attributed the failures to external intrusions of unknown origin. The Strategic Operational Command then deployed an air patrol network using Sukhoi Su-30 Mk2 aircraft, which took off from Barcelona Air Base. Each flight lasted an average of 45 minutes, and the aircraft maintained an altitude between 7,000 and 9,000 meters, monitoring the eastern airspace. In parallel, Venezuelan state media accused the United States of carrying out electronic warfare operations to destabilize the country's communications. Washington denied any direct implication, but did not dispute that its naval units were conducting exercises in the area. From Washington, the spokesman for the National Security Council merely stated that the United States continues to monitor the situation closely. He neither denied nor confirmed the CIA's involvement in the incident, and in the following hours, a second Pentagon statement would fully confirm that the Caribbean Sentinel operation was only the first step of a broader plan, whose ultimate objective was just beginning to be revealed. Following President Trump's confirmation, the official version and international reactions began to crystallize. Reuters reported on October 15, 2025, that the presidential authorization would allow the CIA to conduct covert operations in Venezuela and the Caribbean Strip, including lethal options, according to officials cited by the New York Times. The administration offered $50 million for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Nicolás Maduro. Trump told reporters that he acted for two reasons: the migration of Venezuelans to the United States and drug trafficking, and stated that authorities had made progress intercepting shipments at sea, which is why they were now focusing on land routes. Without providing evidence for his claim that Venezuela was sending prisoners into U.S. territory, The president defended the measure as a response to risks to national security. The Venezuelan government described the statements as a violation of international law and announced diplomatic actions. Through Minister Ivan Gil, Caracas expressed its intention to lodge a complaint with the UN Security Council and hold the U.S. government directly responsible for what it described as an attempt at regime change aimed at seizing oil resources. In parallel, the Pentagon reported that the United States had ordered a military deployment in the southern Caribbean. U.S. forces conducted, according to the government, at least 5 attacks against vessels that the administration pointed to as being involved in drug trafficking, without presenting detailed public evidence about those incidents. Congress and the press have questioned the lack of information. The White House declined to elaborate on the nature of the authorizations. Senators expressed concern. Senator Jean Shaheen of the Foreign Relations Committee stated that the administration had brought the United States closer to a possible conflict, and that the people deserved to know if they were being led toward a confrontation that would put military personnel at risk. The administration also faces questions about the consistency of its claims about the origin of fentanyl. Official records point to Mexico as the main source of fentanyl reaching the United States, in contrast to the president's accusations against Venezuela. In summary, the presidential statements and subsequent decisions reconfigure the debate on the legality and risks of a strategy that combines covert intelligence measures with an open military presence in the region. In the following days, the international community closely monitored the implications of the announcement. The United Nations, through its Secretary General, avoided commenting directly on the authorization given to the CIA, although several Security Council members called for an emergency session to discuss the situation. Russia and China expressed their rejection, pointing out that any foreign intelligence operation within a sovereign state violated the UN Charter. In Latin America, governments maintained cautious positions. Brazil and Colombia reaffirmed their cooperation with the United States in the fight against drug trafficking, while Mexico and Argentina called for dialogue and diplomatic mediation. Venezuela, for its part, reinforced security at strategic installations and reiterated that it would denounce the case before international organizations. From Washington, the White House merely stated that the measures adopted seek to protect the American people from transnational threats. However, the lack of transparency about the real scope of the operations keeps open the discussion on whether the United States is crossing the line between deterrence and direct intervention. Trump's confirmation marked a turning point. Intelligence returned to the center of the geopolitical stage, and the Caribbean became, once again, a territory of tension and constant surveillance.